Good morning. Morning.
Good morning, doctor.
Yeah, morning. Is there a problem with net connection?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, you still have it? I mean, did you face this problem today?
Yes, and yesterday.
Oh, yesterday and today, yeah?
Yes.
I see. I've already reported this to the administration.
No, it's
Yeah.
from the government, doctor, not from
Is it?
Yes, from the government.
I thought it was to do with the educational system, yeah, with the online, I mean, system here. That's
No,
what
no,
I've
no.
been told.
Last 2 days, it's because of the government for some
That's
issues.
okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's have a brief discussion before we proceed to oral practice and the impact of one's mother tongue's phonotactic patterns on his or her performance, spoken performance. Of course, when we speak of phonotactics, we have to bear in mind that we deal with the spoken form, with speech sounds. So syllables, stress placement, allophones, then we'll have intonation, phonological processes. All these are to do with the phonological system, with the spoken form of the language, rather than the written form. Right. Ines, can you just define allophones? Can you tell us briefly what allophones are? Ines?
Maybe the sound or the different sound between P and P, or how to produce
Allophones.
Can I doctor?
What are allophones?
A group of phones.
Can I
Groups of,
doctor?
May I?
Of phones.
who is that?
Phoneme. Phoneme.
Yeah, Osama.
Yes, it's a group of phoneme.
Allophones.
Can I
May I?
doctor?
No.
Can I دكتور?
Who is that?
Salam.
Okay, Salam.
Allophones different way or a different way to pronounce a phoneme based on its environment in a word.
Okay. So it's allophones. I mean, this word consists of allo, A-L-L-O, which means different or variant. Yeah, variant, in which case it's variants. Variants of the same phoneme. Allophones are variants of the same phoneme or different phonemic shapes of the same phoneme.
Phoneme.
In other words, some phonemes, a phoneme is the smallest significant unit that can contrast meaning. Some phonemes, are pronounced in two different ways. So, for instance, each voiceless stop, p, t, and k, is pronounced in two different ways. One is aspirated, the other is aspirated. When do we have aspirated allophones?
May I, Doctor?
Yes, Ahmed.
Doctor, when it is followed by vowel.
When it begins a word, that's to say, when it occupies an initial position. Initial means beginning, yes. INITIAL. When it occupies an initial position and is followed by a vowel sound, in which case we say the sound, the voiceless stop is realized as aspirated. What does aspirated mean? What do you mean by aspirated?
That there is
a sound like ha.
I mean, it means, yeah, that's the symbol we use. I mean, to show aspiration, we write a small h. But what does aspiration mean?
May I, Doctor?
Yes, Ahmed.
Doctor, that there is a puff of air when we pronounce
it means that the voiceless stop is accompanied by a puff of air. It's accompanied by a puff of air. Aspiration. This is why we call it aspiration. Aspirated and unaspirated. Excuse me, I just can't work with this noise. Okay, so this means that the sound, the voiceless stop, is followed or accompanied by aspiration, a puff of air, if it's followed by a vowel. If the voiceless stop is followed by a consonant sound, then we call it unaspirated. You can always experiment if you like. So hold your palm or a lighter, or a piece of paper. You can tell the difference. So in pronouncing words like TWO, how would one say it?
May I? No.
Yes.
Two.
Again.
Two.
Two.
Without aspiration.
Two. Yeah, two.
Yeah.
Right. So there should be an aspiration. An aspiration. Why? Because two, is it followed by a consonant or a vowel? Now, is that followed by a consonant sound or a vowel sound?
Vowel sound, semi-vowel,
Yeah,
doctor.
a vowel sound, because you have the sound oo, which is back, rounded. So it's followed by a vowel, not by a consonant, although wa is a glide, right? Okay. What else do we have? I mean, what examples of allophones are there?
We have the dark and clear voice
Clear
as we
and
relate it.
dark. Yeah,
Mhm.
clear and dark. So we say lip, lack, but well, middle, physical, etc. There is a dark L. Okay. How about vowels? Do vowels have allophones?
Yes, it could be either nasalized or oral.
When are they nasalized?
When they are followed by a nasal sound.
By a nasal sound. All vowels, by the way, are nasalized if followed by a nasal sound. So we have oral allophones. We have two allophones. One is oral, the other is nasalized. It's not nasal, it's nasalized because of the influence of the nasal sound on the preceding vowel. Okay. Now, are allophones phonemes? Can they change meaning?
No, it doesn't change meaning.
They don't change meaning.
Yes.
So
No.
if we replace a clear allophone by a dark, or vice versa, the meaning is not affected. Unlike phonemes. Now, how do we determine phonemes? How do we identify phonemes?
It's the sound in the mind.
I mean, how do we determine whether a certain linguistic element is a phoneme or not? What method is used?
Phoneme is the small significant unit.
Yeah, okay. So how do we? I'm not asking about how to define a phoneme. My question is, how do we determine? How can we tell whether a certain element is a phoneme or not?
May I?
When it changed the meaning.
Okay, Salam.
When the phoneme changed the meaning.
How can we check whether a certain element can change meaning or not? What do we do?
Doctor, if they are constant or vowels, it must be phoneme.
Okay, how can we tell that they are phonemes?
We replace it with another phoneme.
Okay, so what do we do
And
then?
we see if
What do we select? What do we select? We try to find minimal pairs. Now, minimal pairs are two words that are identical except for one phoneme.
Yes.
You see what I mean? Minimal pairs are two words that have exactly the same number of sounds in the same order, but differ either at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. We say they differ either initially, medially in the middle, or finally at the end. Okay, so if by replacing one phoneme by another, the meaning changes, then we establish or identify that element as a phoneme. So if we have words like view and few, view and few, although I mean these have different spelling, but they are minimal pairs, because how many sounds does each have?
3.
It must be
تعيدهم
equal.
الكلمات
It must
How
be
many
same
sounds does each word have?
شو هن الكلمات دكتور؟
3.
Again,
الكلمات ايش هن؟
View, few.
view and few.
Yes, 3.
3. They have the same number of sounds in the same order. In the same order. So you have f, y, u, and v, y, u. So we call these minimal pairs. They differ initially. Now, what makes this difference are the f and v. Since these two can contrast meaning, we state that these are phonemes. They are phonemes. Let's have more examples of minimal pairs.
Can I see, Doctor?
Yes,
Bat, bit, bat,
again,
bit, bat,
pit and,
bat.
okay, so they differ initially, medially. Okay.
ممكن fan, zan,
Again,
zan.
okay,
Can I
right.
do?
Right.
Can I?
Seal.
Safe and save.
That's very good. Yeah, that's a good example. Safe,
Can I do?
safe, and save. Yes, Afnan.
Yes, doctor. Pen and bin.
Again.
Pen and bin.
Okay. How about sin and thin? Sin and thin.
Can I, doctor?
Yeah. How about sick and thick?
Yes.
Sick.
Yes,
thick.
they are minimal pairs. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we have, what's the difference between dhalla and dalla?
The phoneme.
Yeah.
The.
I mean,
The.
is there a difference between dhalla and dalla?
Yes, different phoneme and meaning. Different the meaning.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is why, since we have different phonemes, we are bound to have different meanings. Yeah, of course. Now, some students, some Arab learners of Arabic, yes. Can we use that expression? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Can we use that?
Doctor?
راح الصوت الدكتور ما سمعناش.
It's a legitimate question, by the way.
دكتور ما سمعنا أي.
This is a legitimate question. Now, how many of you are native speakers of Arabic?
دكتور بس احنا ما سمعنا شيء من اللي حكيته قبل، راح الصوت.
Yeah, okay. I could see. Yeah, I was trying to say that sometimes speakers of Arabic, of standard Arabic, may have a foreign accent.
Yes.
How far is that true, and why?
Yes, all of them, they have foreign accent.
Yeah,
We don't
why
have
so you
it.
think?
Because of الاستعمار. I forget what the meaning of استعمار in English.
Human colonization?
Yes.
دكتور
No, my question is on linguistic grounds.
Or linguistics, yes, because Arabic language, it's hard.
دكتور
I mean, let's have this statement. I mean, just tell me whether this is true or false.
Okay.
Speakers of Arabic have a foreign accent when they speak standard Arabic. Is that right?
No,
Now, we always say that that Arab learners of English may have a foreign accent. Is it true to say that
No.
that speakers of Arabic may have a foreign accent?
No.
No?
Yes, no.
yes
No,
they may
what? In what context? In the context of standard Arabic, the answer is no.
Yes, standard Arabic.
We don't have a foreign accent.
Yes, we don't.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that some students here do have a problem with the dot. So instead of saying dalla, the tendency is to replace it by dhalla. That causes a foreign accent.
دكتور maybe
Because one phoneme is replaced by another. Instead of saying dhalla, I mean, we say that Arabic is lughat ad-dad, the language of dad. How many people use the dad? Even as they try to read Arabic or speak standard Arabic, the tendency is to replace dad by the, or the by za in some dialects. Now, in talking about phonotactics, many Arabs don't say, now Dimashq, does it have a cluster? Dimashq?
yes in the two consonants.
Assign the word Dimashq, C's and V's. Assign the word Dimashq, C's and V's. How many sounds does it have? CV,
CC.
CV.
Another CV and CC.
D is CV. Ma.
Yes.
Ma is
CV also.
Then
shaq CC.
CC.
Or C.
Yeah. So it has CV, CC. So we say that that the word Dimashq has a cluster of two consonants. Now I've noticed that many Arabs, by the way, instead of saying Dimashq with a cluster, they say Dimashq. Have you noticed this?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean many speakers of Arabic, instead of saying Dimashq, they say Dimashq. Instead of saying bint, they say binit. In which case, they break the cluster. This means
even the name Yusuf and Yusuf.
Yeah, that's not a cluster, Raida. Yeah, they do. I mean, replace one phoneme by another, which may result in a change of meaning. Yes, and if we replace a vowel, one vowel by another, of course, we are bound to have a minimal pair. So what's the difference between khutbah and khutbah?
خطبة هي خطبة الجمعة، وخطبة اللي هي خطبة الرجل وبنت يعني.
Engaged.
In colloquial Arabic, what do we say? خطبة ولا خطبة?
خطبة.
كله عندنا خطبة.
Yeah, we use both. We say khutbah for both.
Yes.
Now, what's the difference between khitta and khutta?
خطة كتب بخط اليد.
خطة with a ha or a ta مربوطة. Yes.
خطة is a plan.
Yes.
Which one is plan?
The first one, خطة.
خطبة is plan. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
خطة دراسية, for instance. We say خطة دراسية. What's a خطة?
خطة اللي هي الهاند رايتنج.
Jose, it has been lined. Like.
خطة.
كتب بخط مثلا. جميل.
ونحط تحتيه خط.
It has nothing to do with the writing, I think. خطة here means a piece of land, an allotment. يعني قطعة أرض. لاحظين two values apart. I mean, they are totally different simply by changing the vowel. So changing vowels results in a total change of meaning. We have different forms with two different meanings. Yeah, that's why we have to master the articulation of each and every sound: consonants, vowels, diphthongs, triphthongs. Yeah. So I think this is worth investigating, by the way. Most Arab learners of English, by the way, do have a foreign accent. A foreign accent when they speak standard Arabic, that is, standard. Because we all acquire the linguistic system of our dialect: Jordanian, Syrian, Iraqi, Egyptian, etc. So we acquire the linguistic system of our dialects in its entirety. But we learn the linguistic system of Arabic. This is why we face difficulties. I mean, we do face difficulties in using standard Arabic, spoken or written, because we don't acquire the linguistic system of that language. So we start learning Arabic at the age of, say, 5, 6, perhaps 7 in some countries. So think about this topic. Do Arab learners? Yeah, of course, they are Arab learners of Arabic. Yes. Do speakers of Arabic? Okay, think about this for next time. Do speakers of Arabic have a foreign accent when they speak standard Arabic? Just think along these lines. We'll discuss it, next time. Do speakers of Arabic have a foreign accent in standard Arabic? If so, if they do face such difficulties, an accent. Why? Justify, give the reason why. We need to find solutions, for this. Of course, I'm sure all of you are aware of the difference between language acquisition and language learning. It's learners who face difficulties, not native speakers. Native speakers hardly, I'm saying, apart from few exceptions, but they hardly find or face difficulties in speaking their language. Yeah. Yes, Mona, did you want to say something?
دكتور كنت أجاوب على السؤال.
So what is the difference between language acquisition and language learning?
إيش دكتور السؤال بالله تعيده لأنه راح صوتك شوي عندي.
What is the difference between language acquisition and language learning?
دكتور language acquisition اللي هي اللغة المكتسبة اللي we learn it at schools and from the childhood, and the language learning اللي هي for foreigner people that want to learn like Arabic language. They are not native of Arabic.
Now, technically, linguistically speaking, what is the difference between language learning and language acquisition? Yeah, of course, language acquisition means اكتساب اللغة. Language learning is تعلم اللغة. What is the difference between acquisition and learning?
Can I, Doctor?
Yeah. Yes,
can I?
Doctor?
Yes, Osama.
The acquisition that influences from other words or other sounds?
Acquisition.
Yes.
Acquisition يعني اكتساب.
Yes, أنا أقصد أنها مكتسبة من
اكتساب اللغة.
نعم مكتسبة من كلمات.
What is the difference between language acquisition, اكتساب اللغة, and language learning?
Can I?
And which is better?
May I? Noor.
Which is better, to acquire or to learn a language?
Both together.
Yeah.
To acquire, of course.
Doctor, language.
So what's the difference?
May I, Doctor?
Yes, Asil. What's the difference between acquisition and learning?
Position means somehow absorbing target language, sound system and structure, but language learning refers to learning about a language, its sound system.
Any other attempts?
May I?
Yes, sure.
Noor.
Yes,
okay.
Noor.
The first one is when you live with someone and you take the local language, like their native language with their new like phrases, and you think that come into the language. While learning a language is learning the basic, the standards of the language with the right pronunciation and the right forms.
Right. Now, to start with, language acquisition is unconscious. So when we acquire the linguistic system of a language, we don't think about rules. We acquire it. Yeah, that's one. Two, language acquisition is informal. It's informal. It doesn't involve any formal teaching. In other words, we don't teach children at the age of 2, 3, 4. We don't teach them how to speak. They start speaking. They are exposed to whatever linguistic data provided. Then they deduct the rules. They acquire the rules unconsciously, informally, while language learning is conscious and formal. We have a learning context, formal teaching. Now, of course, the ideal situation is to immerse in the culture and acquire the language. Learning is sometimes insufficient. So to learn a language, it may take 6 to 1 year, 6 to 12 months of intensive formal teaching. But children acquire language teaching almost in no time. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that speakers of Arabic do have a foreign accent when they speak standard Arabic or when they read standard Arabic. So for instance, they replace certain phonemes. I mean, people who have a problem with the dot, they make it da. Instead of saying dalla, let them say dalla. Dalla, of course, is completely different from dalla. Wherever the dot occurs, it's replaced by da. So instead of saying walad dallin, even in reciting the glorious Quran, sometimes some imams would say walad dallin instead of ad-dallin. That's one thing. The other is the ta. In some dialects, it goes to ta. The sad, yeah? How many of you have a problem with the sad in Arabic? They change it to a sa sound. Tha goes either to sa, or ta. These let's say pronunciation problems reveal that some Arab learners of standard Arabic do have a foreign accent because they don't apply the phonological rules of standard Arabic. We have negative transfer from dialects, from spoken Arabic. Think about this for next time. Okay? Think about it. Right. 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 This is to do with negative transfer. I mean, all foreign language learners often have negative transfer from their native language or the native dialect. Now, in case of Arabic speakers, we are influenced by the phonological system of standard Arabic and that of whatever dialect we acquire. In other words, when we speak or write English, we are influenced both by the linguistic system of our dialect and that of standard Arabic. So when some Arab learners of English mispronounce certain phonemes, like the ch phoneme and the word cheap, they tend to say sheep. This is because of the influence of the standard and sometimes colloquial, because the ch sound does not occur in standard Arabic and it does not occur in all Arabic dialects. So some students have no problem with the ch. Others do. They replace it by sh. Why? Because that's the nearest sound. It's the nearest sound to ch. So instead of saying chip, they say ship. Cheap, sheep. Chat, shat. I often hear this. I mean, when they say, I'm having a chat.
Sometimes.
Chat instead of chat.
Yes.
That's a phonemic difference. That is a phonemic difference. Chap, chap, and shap. They say shap. Even chips go
Children or children.
Children, children. Now, how do we justify this sort of error? I call it error. This is an error. It's an error because it's to do with one's competence. Now, this is due to the influence of the phonological system of standard Arabic. Now, in standard Arabic, we don't have a cha, do we? We don't have a cha in standard Arabic, do we?
No.
Do we have a cha?
No.
Standard Arabic?
No.
No. Do all of you, I mean, being Jordanians, yeah, or some Arab learner, I mean, non-Jordanians, do you all have the ch phoneme in your dialects?
Yes.
All of you?
No, but
In Jordan, I mean, in Jordan, we have three types of learners. Yeah, we have rural, urban, and tribal. We have tribal dialect, urban dialect, and rural dialect. So we can't categorize errors on the basis of geography. The same applies to the notion of language. So languages cannot be defined in terms of geography, in terms of nationality. Being Jordanian does not necessarily mean, or Iraqi, let's say, does not necessarily mean that he or she speaks Arabic. I know of a prominent Iraqi linguist in the States whose son was studying Arabic from scratch as a foreign language in some Arab countries, So we can't divide or identify languages in terms of geography. You know why? Any reason why?
Yes, because like some local people, they just speak English, for example.
Okay. Now,
since they were
the Americans and the British are geographically far away. They don't live in the same even in the same continent. They live in different continents. Geographically, they are different, but linguistically, they speak one language. They speak one language. This is the reason why it's hard to define languages on geographical basis. And even today, it's hard to draw a distinction between a language and a dialect. Some linguists maintain that language is a dialect with a navy or with an army. You see what I mean? So what makes a dialect a language is not linguistics. I mean, this is not based on linguistic grounds. It could be based on political grounds, on religious grounds. I mean, if Latin, for instance, was the language of the Roman Empire, why? Because it was the religious language. Arabic is the religious language. That's why it's the standard. I mean, Quraysh dialect, for instance, is the main dialect in which the glorious Quran was revealed. So Quraysh dialect has become a standard language. Now, there is always negative transfer. We need to tell and diagnose the difficulties some native speakers of a certain language face or encounter as they learn a target language or a foreign language. So the phonotactic patterns of a language have had a compulsive effect upon its speakers, in that these speakers find it hard to break the patterns of the native tongue or native language. So they find it hard to break the patterns of their native language. Remember that different languages have different sound patterns and habituate themselves to the use of new ones. So as we learn a foreign language, we learn different sounds and we learn different sound patterns. So the way sounds combine in English differs from that of Arabic or French. You see? So we need to habituate, to acquire, to learn new habits of speech. Habituate is the verb of habit. If, for example, you try to teach a Spaniard to pronounce student, he's likely to persist in saying is student. Most Spanish people, by the way, most Spanish people, instead of, so these problems are not confined to Arab learners of English. The word student is likely to be pronounced as is student because well, actually it has a cluster of three. It has a cluster of three consonants, yeah? Student. You have a s, a t, and a ya. So having a cluster of three, and because the s and t this sequence doesn't occur in Spanish, so the tendency is to insert a vowel at the beginning to make it a student. A struggle, for instance. In case of Arab learners, they tend to say street. So they insert the vowel after the s sound. Street, struggle, construction, they say. Yeah, because for some time, because certa is not an initial consonant cluster in Spanish, whereas est is common. So that's why they have negative transfer. Likewise, an American in India has great difficulty in pronouncing the native term for washerman, which is dhopi. Dhopi. Because da and ha, an aspirated da, that is, yeah, does not occur initially in English. Instead, he will say dobby without dobby. This is why they pronounce, how do they pronounce Bahrain? What's Bahrain in English? Bahrain. How do you say Bahrain in English? Any idea?
Bahrain.
Yeah. How do they say Bahrain? How do native speakers of English pronounce the word Bahrain?
Bahrain.
Like they pronounce
they say Bahrain. Bahrain.
Bahrain.
Bahrain. Without the ha is silent, so they don't pronounce the ha. And instead of saying it's written Bahrain, but they pronounce it as Bahrain because they don't have that sequence. Now, what's Mr. in French?
Monsieur.
What is it?
Again?
Monsieur.
Yeah, monsieur. You know how this is pronounced by Americans and some British?
Monsieur.
They have a problem with saying monsieur. They say monsieur. They say monsieur. Why? Because there is a phonological rule in English which changes s to sh if it's followed by a ya sound. So I miss you goes to I miss you. bless you goes to bless you. They say, God bless you, I miss you. So hence, since the word monsieur has a sir followed by ya, the sir goes to sha. So they tend to say it monsieur. This is how one's phonological system negatively affects one's performance as he or she learns a foreign language, because different languages have not only have different sounds, different inventories of phonemes, but they also have different patterns. Yet this same American can say toppy with perfect ease, because initial t, this is to do with aspiration, allophones. So when we have a voiceless stop, each voiceless stop in English has two allophones, aspirated and unaspirated. So this is the aspirated. He can easily produce this 10, 2, but not dog, because the da is unaspirated in English. So yet this same American can say Toby with perfect ease, because initial t and aspirated t is a normal word beginning in English. The general tendency is for a speaker to pronounce words borrowed from another tongue with the phonotactic patterns of his own language, even when he can utter the foreign cluster. For instance, it's easy for us to say shana. Sha, this is sha, by the way. Sa with this sign is a sha, which is a voiceless palato-alveolar fricative, sha. Now, Americans, native speakers of English may say this. They can say this at the beginning of a word, as in German Schnorchel or Schnorchel. Yeah, but we normally change the word to na instead of na, to conform with our own English initial cluster, because this cluster is permitted in English. Sa followed by na. We have snow, snore, snare, but not sha followed by na. So all words that are borrowed, all loan words that are borrowed from another language must be naturalized. They must adapt to the phonological system of the borrowing language. This happens in all, this applies to all loan words. And of course, all languages do borrow words from other languages. And when I first got to Saudi Arabia, I often heard people say Jarabox. And for the first time, I just couldn't figure out what they were saying. Jarabox. حدا بيعرف معناها؟ Has anybody been to Saudi Arabia? What's a Jarabox?
Jara box?
Yeah. Any idea?
No.
Yeah, it's a borrowed word. It's a loan word from English, which is gearbox. Gearbox. Gearbox.
جير السيارة؟
Sorry, yes, gear السيارة طبعا. Gearbox اللي هو ناقل الحركة in Arabic, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So the word has been naturalized. So instead of having ga at the beginning, they made it ja. And they made it one word, a blend, jarabox. Jarabox, they say, not jarabox, of course.
Jarabox.
Yeah? So most words are naturalized. Now, what is logarithm in Arabic?
Your voice.
خوارزمية.
Your voice, doctor.
It's in Arabic we say اللوغاريتمات. اللوغاريتمات, yes. اللوغاريتمات. درستوا هذا؟ احنا بندرسه في الأردن ولا ما؟
لا درسناه دكتور لوغاريتم، درسناه بالرياضيات.
في الرياضيات اللوغاريتمات, yes.
Yes, درسناها.
Yes,
Now this is, by the way, in English it's logarithm.
Yes.
Logarithm. The origin of this word, if you check Oxford Dictionary or Skeet's etymological dictionary, is al-Khwarizmiyat, al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmi, that's the founder of that branch of science. So English has no kha sound, so they made it logarithm to conform to the phonotactic patterns of English. So it was adapted phonetically and phonologically, phonotactically. All words borrowed from other languages must be naturalized. This is why, for instance, we have words like in Arabic, we have words like fadilat, nash'at. How do you write nash'at? نشأت in Arabic. How do you spell it?
نون شاء بعدين همزة على ألف.
اوكي.
وتاء.
وليش تاء مفتوحة طيب؟
ايش هي؟
ليش التاء مفتوحة؟ مش مربوطة يعني.
لأنه فعل.
لأنه فعل؟ لا، نشأت اسم.
نشأت
ورأفت.
نشأت.
سكون.
فكرت نشأت.
The proper name. نشأت رأفت بهجت.
Yes.
Yeah. Why is it بهجت ونشأت بالتاء المفتوحة؟ لازم تكون مربوطة ولا لا؟ اليوم نسألكم أسئلة صعبة شوي. Being native speakers of Arabic.
دكتور.
Yes.
يمكن عشانها سبقت بهمزة لأنه الألف مهموز اللي قبلها.
فبتصير مفتوحة ولا
قبل
مربوطة ولا مفتوحة؟
مفتوحة.
لا كيف؟ لازم تكون مربوطة. نشأة الكون، كيف نكتب نشأة الكون؟
نشأة الكون.
نشأة الكون.
مربوطة.
تاء مفتوحة ولا مربوطة؟
تاء
مربوطة. نشأة رأفت رأفة.
ممكن دكتور مشان تمييز الأسماء الأشخاص عن الكلمات المشابهة.
لا أبدا. This is because of Turkish influence. Because non-native speakers of Arabic, don't realize that Arabic has a posal form. يعني احنا صيغة بتكون وقف. يعني مثلا نقول نشأة فهم إذا كانت الصيغة وقف they pronounce it نشأت. عارفين صيغة الوقف في العربي؟ نشأت. Now إذا كان نشأة احنا في العربي ما حد ممكن يرفض النشأة يرفضها نشأت إلا إذا كانت متبوعة بكلمة ثانية. يعني we say نشأة، رأفة، بهجة. but if it's followed يعني إذا كانت مضاف إليه we say نشأة الكون. صارت يعني نطقت، فهم ما بيميزوا بين الوقف وغير الوقف. That's why I mean it has a foreign influence, negative transfer. Right. Next time we'll have phonological processes, and we'll have some practice, oral practice. I'd like you to select 2 passages, same size as this, say 20 lines, 15 lines each. Read it carefully and try to analyze it phonologically in light of your study of phonological rules of English. So I'll choose 5, 6 students at random. So select any 2 passages, 2 texts, and analyze them phonologically. Try to record your performance.
So free text, yes?
Sorry, don't send
free
it.
Text?
Don't send it. We'll discuss it in class. Right. Do you have any questions?
No, doctor.
Okay. Right. I'll let you go then. I'll let you go. Let you go. Let you go. We need to apply these rules. Right.
Thank you, doctor.
Right. Right. Okay.
يعطيك العافية دكتور.
Allah Hafiz. Work hard. I'm sure. I mean, you are picking a native accent